Hey guys, I'm Matthew Werfel, co-founder of BeatProdigy. On behalf of my fellow partners, I'd like to say welcome and thank you for participating in our minimum viable product prototype run. Think of this as sort of a beta test to see how our product functions and to see its effectiveness when used with real musicians like you. I'm a beginner to intermediate march and snare player, but eventually this lesson course will feature multiple pro instructors and DCI snare line members to demonstrate technique and teach the course in a manner that is at the same level as snare lessons, just at a much lower price. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get going with our first lesson of the Beginning Your Snare Journey course, Approach. Welcome to the first lesson in Beginning Your Snare Journey, Approach. This is a course teaching the basic technique, warm-up exercises, and repertoire for the marching snare. This course is designed for those who have experience in percussion, like drum set or concert snare, but will work seamlessly for anyone who has a rudimentary understanding of basic music theory. So let's get started. The marching snare is a very versatile instrument and is used in many different styles and settings, so it's good to have a baseline of standards for equipment so your learning process can be streamlined. Don't worry, practicing marching snare doesn't require purchasing and maintaining an expensive snare. The majority of high school drumline musicians use a real drum at their school, but a practice pad at home. Practice pads are a great tool. It's a portable medium for you to build your drumming chops on. Just remember, they'll never completely replace the feeling and experience of playing on a real marching snare, hence pad hands. So keep in mind, in order to progress to a more advanced level, it's recommended you practice or play regularly on a real marching snare. Practice pads come in many varieties, and just about any of the main brands like Vic Firth or Evans will provide you with a solid product. I personally recommend one of these, newer versions of the Off-Road Invader. It's slightly more expensive, and yet it's an incredible pad that builds chops, recreates rebound, in a durable way not seen in some other pads. While not absolutely necessary, a stand like this Gibraltar will help with drum height and keeping your pad fixed and stationary. So I definitely recommend getting your hands on one as you learn and progress as well. Let's move on to the role of the marching snare. In a traditional drumline setting, there's a bass line, a tenor line or quads, and the snare line. The basses are traditionally known for playing splits, but in reality they normally set the backing framework for the book. The snare line leads the main rhythm, pattern, phrase musically, while the tenors build off of that rhythm and embellish it with new pitches and techniques. Snare is usually played with traditional grip. Traditional grip was originally used for military drummers whose drum would be slung over their shoulder and would lay at an angle by their waist, meaning holding in a more uniform, matched grip would be counterproductive, thus the creation of the traditional grip. Today you'll see high school groups use both traditional and matched, although most high-level DCI and WGI groups use traditional on a flat-line drum, which is how we'll be playing in this course and is usually the most commonly found style. Building rhythm takes time and practice, but one tool that can help is marking time. Even though right now you're not marching, marking time helps keep rhythm so that you can set your hands to your feet. It's a great way of keeping time and aids in a seamless transitioning when you combine playing and marching. Now that we're talking about approach, let's start with drum height. So drum height is interpretive and it can vary in interpretation by teacher to teacher. But a general idea, if you played like a concert snare before, is that if you're setting up, it should be an inch or two below your waist. It could also be a little bit higher, maybe even a little bit lower. It really depends. You just have to feel. Once you start learning your grip and playing different pieces, you have to kind of just feel what feels right. So let's think about it this way. If we hold out our set position, and it's fine if you don't know how to grip the sticks yet, hold out your set position, whatever feels nice, relaxed, comfortable, tension-free, and move forward into your pad, and the beads of your stick should be about a centimeter or two above the pad. Let's continue to talk about approach with preventing tension. So before you start playing, it's good to stretch, warm up, whatever you want to, but just kind of get in that focus mood. Breathe in, breathe out. And in general, there's a lot of specific technique points and intricacies that involve being relaxed and not using tension. So overall, just keep in your mind that you should always be very relaxed and just be tension-free when you can. And now a couple things to just keep in mind through your learning process that we're not focusing on yet necessarily, but will be covered more in depth in the future. So counterweights. Let's think about the basic stroke types in the future. But for now, just keep in mind that a counterweight motion when you're going through different strokes is very important. Utilizing this part of your lower arm is important. And as I go up and down with this full-on rebound stroke, you can see my arm and my elbow come in towards my body. It's a little bit more clear to see on the left hand. So keep in mind this counterweight idea. So you'll hear about people using fingers, about building finger chops. Approach-wise, another thing to go over that we're just going to kind of brush over for now is the difference between heights and dynamics. You'll hear them use these two terms used interchangeably, but they can't be different. I can play at a very fast velocity at like a 3-inch height and play at nearly mezzo forte, or I could also play ghost notes. So remember that they can't really be used interchangeably. So set position. Set position is very important. So we have our approach now, walk up to the drum, got the drum height down and everything, and kind of have an understanding of the snare. And now we have our set position. So while you might not know your traditional grip yet, kind of just hold your sticks out. And the first thing you want to notice is that there's about a 90-degree angle between my two sticks. They're about an inch or two, a centimeter or two, above the practice pad or the drum. And also the angle vertically going down from my hand to the drum shouldn't be too high, or else when you're stroking the head, you're only going to use a portion of the bead and you'll get a worse sound quality. So kind of have it not completely flat on the rim, but kind of just about here. And finally, let's think about drawing some imaginary lines. So let's draw an imaginary line from the elbow all the way out to the bead of my right hand stick. That should be about a straight line. And yet again, there's different interpretations for this, but usually you want a straight line here. You've also seen probably chicken arms in the past on some lines, but just think about an imaginary line here. On the left hand, let's think about a similar imaginary line running from the elbow, but instead, all the way to the bead is running to the edge of your thumb. So this is your basic set position. You also hear this a lot as a tip. It's very important. Whenever practicing or before practicing, please warm up or stretch properly. Then when you're practicing, practice in front of a mirror or even just a phone camera when you can, so that you can see what you're doing and improve your technique then. You also hear people talking about cleanliness. One technique to build this rhythmic accuracy is called burying the met. So when you're practicing with a metronome, I'm not going to speak scientifically about the acoustics, but you should, say if you're playing 8/8/16, you shouldn't hear the metronome. So you would be burying the met. And continuing with this idea of the interpretation of the beat and rhythmic accuracy, you'll hear people originally in elementary music just saying like, play with the beat. And then you also hear about playing in the pocket in a jazz setting or a rock setting. And finally in drumline, you'll hear about playing slightly ahead. This isn't true. What you want to do instead is just think of playing on top of the beat, not necessarily ahead, on top of the beat. One more thing to keep in mind is that when you're playing on a practice pad, you can't replicate hearing the sound quality that you're playing with. And so you gotta pretend to play through the drum. You don't want to be playing what's called thin. And so you kind of have to find this balance yet again between playing too lightly or thinly and playing with a harsh tone. Just a really nice, solid, forceful stroke. In most cases, though, you should technique-wise go off of what your instructor, tech, or private lesson teacher is saying. This is a supplementary baseline merely for your snare journey and progress, and technique interpretations vary drastically, teacher to teacher. But overall, I'm so excited that we BeatProdigy will be along for the ride as you learn the marching snare. Over the course of this lesson, we've learned what the marching snare is, how to approach the instrument, the basic setup, and the framework that traditional grip is built on. Stay tuned for the next lesson in the series, where we'll continue our study of traditional grip and finding a balance between a French and a German grip to get a really nice medium and an American grip, as well as preventing slicing during your stick rotation. Thank you.
Thanks so much for participating in our BeatProdigy beta experience. I hope you enjoy the feedback loop and you benefit from it too. And if you have any feedback or suggestions about us, our website, and our lessons, please leave them in the link below of the lesson page. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.